Give us a clap, Jacob.
Clappy, clappy.
One clap, please.
Fine. One slow clap.
Thank you.
That's all right. The attitude there. That's the cold open, right there.
It's just Tyler doing this.
Yeah, just stare eyes the whole time.
Cool. So yeah, Gorcin, give us a little rundown of what's going on for our open. Said open twice.
I was waiting for a full stop because that was a comma.
That wasn't even a comma, that was an ellipses. When you're ready, buddy, give it.
Okay.
Give it.
Send it.
I just kind of want to see how much longer I can count in this square.
We're gonna be here a while.
Welcome back to another episode of the HMG podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Gorcin, and we have the full crew with me today. I have Dan.
Howdy.
I have Tyler.
Hello.
And Jacob.
Hello.
I just realized I did that pointing on my screen, so I don't know if that's actually going to work.
The only wrong one was Jacob. You pointed off screen for me. And
okay,
perfect.
Perfect.
My screen, it's funny. But anyway, keep going.
The system works extremely well. So, consistent to our previous form, all of our technical situations are not difficulties, they're opportunities. Today we're talking about a Band of Brothers recap. This is D-Day +1. We just did a video covering the first Band of Brothers event. This is basically the sequel. If you want full breakdown details of this event, the players pack's in the description. If you want to know how the event format works generally, go check out the other episode. We're just going to sort of hit the contours and then break down the actual event itself. We've gotten a lot of requests for event recaps, so we're going to do that here and now. So Band of Brothers is a team event. It's a 3-person team event, and I broke a lot of rules when it comes to bolt action. You don't play a 3v3, you play 3 separate 1v1s. There's a draft mechanic about who fights who and that sort of thing, as well as a draft that comes up after the list of your matchup. There's a which table you're going to play on as well. I enforced theater platoons only, theater selectors only. So no generic reinforced platoons. The idea behind that being one of the problems I had with the last event is that we got very samey lists, even within the same team. They were pretty samey. And so I wanted a way to try to encourage players to break that, lean into this. The whole point of a team event is that you can take skew lists because you can cover up your weaknesses with your opponent's strengths. And as the lists started coming through, it was pretty clear to me that some teams really got that and some teams were still finding their feet, which is the nature of any kind of event when you break the format. So with sort of that out of the way, there was the same sort of victory points in or secondary missions, secondary points for bringing in medium tank stays alive, bringing a captain. I let people take captains instead of lieutenants, and so on. I let grudge matches fly for round 1 because I think that seems to be a staple in the community for whatever reason. People like grudge matches, and there's a few repeat offenders, and they always get thrown up in there. I think what was definitely exciting for me as the event was sort of spinning up in the week before was how many teams were talking about doing their matchup processes. I think I got about out of 10 teams, 30 players, I got about 6 or 7 people message me and be like, what team am I on? The captain is doing a spreadsheet for matchups. What the hell is going on? And I'm genuinely just applauding that. I'm replying back with like, yes, that's what you should be doing. Well done. You figured out the event. Keep that up and learn from your captain and communicate with each other about what your matchups are.
I love how Uber that makes our community sound like that's what you should be doing. You are competitive bolt action players.
Yeah,
get your spreadsheet on.
That's a good point. I think a lot of people were like fake shocked. They were just like, oh, I can't believe this is happening, sending it to me as a joke. And me on the other side going, Yeah, it's still what you should be doing. Like it's a fun event, but also like there's points. If you're here to win, it's going to help you win. So that was sort of my first question. What as players, each one of you were on separate teams, which is amazing for the HMG podcast. That we went to a 3-player team and one of us was teaming the other one, and we didn't make a HMG team. So
Yeah, crazy.
you know I have
right there.
Yeah, you know, and neither one of you actually took a HMG either. So there's a lot of layers of disappointment here, gentlemen. But these are all things that we can work through. My first question is from sort of the spin up. Basically, once all the lists came out, you guys had submitted your lists. How did you guys find list building as individuals, list building as teams, and then working through those matchups? That's what I want to know. Whoever wants to take this one first, be my guest.
I'm going to go first because my story is whack. So I started a team with Jono and is it Charlie or Sam?
Sam. Goes by Sam.
Okay, just because, Facebook has it the other way. Oops. But yeah, so I started with... No, I didn't. I started with Jono and a friend of the show, Nick. And we were in a team, and then no.
This is on a great start time. Man, I remember who my teammates are, if that helps.
Shut up, all right?
Tyler's teammates, I am so sorry.
Change. Started with Jono, and we didn't have a second for a while. That's why I was getting confused.
A third, perhaps?
Far out, boys. What's going on? Didn't have a third for a while, and then we just kind of put a post out and got Sam on. And for Jono and I, we were basically using it as an excuse, a motivation, I should say, to paint something new, to get an army across, which is
nice. I love it.
Yeah, which is why our army name was "We Made It." Like, we made it with our armies. And Sam was like, "Yeah, that's fine. I don't care about the name." Unfortunately, Jono's work rostered him on, so he had to head off. And then Nick, friend of the show, Nick, stepped in, which was... Is that right?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah?
Which was what?
Yes. No, sorry. Yes. Which was awesome.
He's got a lot of teammates to work through before he gets to the
far
final team.
So, Nick's on my team. And we're... I promise.
I'm starting to see why Nick was the top performer of this team.
What do you mean, Gorcin?
The hand of sabotage played a little bit.
So, Nick came on the team, we were discussing, and we were getting to a point where I was like, all right, we've got lists, these are pretty good, we've kind of covering all the bases, and we can really start to, I think we might have actually gotten to the Excel spreadsheet stage if this team had stayed. However, Sam had to leave due to, I think it was work as well, courting. Yeah. So we brought in Tom, I don't know his last name, but Tom Barrett. And I think he was literally the night before we got him in, or something.
I think it was 2 nights.
Yeah.
It was basically when lists were due after the extension I gave to a team because I forgot to invite them. There's a stalwart cohort of about 6 bolt action players who all play together, and none of them do social media. And every now and again, I forget to send them an email to be like, "Hey guys, there's an event going on." That one was on me. That's why I gave him the extension.
Yeah.
Yes, Tom very much slipped in, basically at the 11th hour with 3 of my armored vehicles and 2 of his, if I remember correctly.
2 of Dan's.
Which was a list that I built at the 11th hour, knowing that we didn't have long, and I went, I need something simple that he's going to be able to run with. Yeah. Tom hasn't played a game for about 3 years. He was at my house. He was at my house on the Wednesday to play a game, and I went, "You don't happen to be free on Saturday, do you?"
That's how bolt action gets you. You always get roped in.
That was my pre-game phase.
Right.
Perfect.
Yep. I'm going to leave it there because I'm already way over time on how long this should take today.
I looked at your guys' list, and there was actually some decent sort of cover-ups. One of the things I did allow was 1 platoon in the team of 3 to be an armored platoon. The idea being you'd probably have enough meat on the bone to be able to soak an armored platoon, or if you get caught up against it, or just let your armored platoons duke it out. And so, Tom had an armored platoon. You guys had not like super skewed lists one way or another, but you had different lists, different enough. So I looked at it and I was like, hey, these guys sort of got the format. So well done for doing that by the seat of your pants.
Thank you.
Dan, how did your team building go? Well, actually, very strongly at the start, I might add. Very strongly.
I was, so the day after the players pack went up, I was headhunted by two people. The first was Jacob. The second was Jacob.
I got in too late.
Yeah, and it was within minutes of the pack going up. And he was like, hey, do you want to be on my team? I was like, I'm sorry, I've been sniped already. And at that time, I didn't tell him who by. But Dan Majak, and he singled me out last year for Banner Brothers to go, we need to get together. We need another Dan, and our team name has to be only Dan's, and we need shirts, and we need the symbol, we need the whole rigmarole. It's like, I don't care about winning. It's like, we're going to be there. We couldn't make it work last year, and so he said, as soon as the players pack dropped, he's like, you and me, we're in. I said, you're not. Don't go to anyone else. I'm not listening. It's you and me. And he's like, do you know a third Dan? And I said, I do know a third Dan.
I know
he hasn't played for about 3 or 4 years, to the best of my knowledge. So I don't know if he's available, but I'll put the feelers out. So I sent a message out to Dan Tyrrell, and I was like, hey, we haven't talked for about 3 or 4 years, because typically we only talk when wargaming, and I have a wargaming for that long. And I was like, I have a proposition for you. So I laid out the dream. And he was well aboard. He's like, I love every bit of this. Like, let's do it. Let's get some games in. Let's make it happen. So he rocked up, and so we had team only dance, and we were set, ready to go. And I was like,
perfect.
I'll do all the heavy lifting in terms of figuring out roughly what lists are compatible, what we're gonna do, whether we're gonna go balanced or skewed or completely over the top OP, what models you have available. I'll sort out rough ideas of where that all sits, because I knew that Daniel Majak was only just starting up, and so he didn't really have a lot ready to go, although his Polish Lancers are coming along.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Dan Tyrrell had a German force, and we were on the Allies faction, so that posed a problem, and I had to problem solve how to fix that, which I did. Bending the rules maybe slightly, but I did.
When I looked at sort of all of the nations that fought on both sides, it's a very exhaustive list.
Yeah,
because I didn't realize. It makes sense, but I didn't realize the Hungarians, the Romanians, basically everybody between Germany and Russia swap sides.
Yep.
Which, when you have that many T-34s knocking down your door, I would switch sides.
And there's also like a lot of the like Bulgaria, for example, their populace was never behind supporting the Nazi regime. They were forced into it through their politicals, and so as soon as the opportunity came to swap sides, they did. Not without repercussions, of course. None of them ever were. But anyway, so we lined Dan up with the ROA, which is a cheeky. They're a Soviet force that was part of the 2nd Army Division, I think it was, that were encircled and captured. Then were equipped and fought under the Germans after the leader had campaigned to say, let me go fight the Soviets. And the reason that he did that was he held a different political alignment to the Soviets that were in charge. Right. So he was trying to basically win to then get a seat in to be a power for the Soviet politicals, not really thinking through his actions, I don't think.
Yeah.
And anyway, so that didn't quite pan out. And so towards the end of the war, when he realized that his army divisions were just being used as bullet fodder, he decided that he didn't want to play that game anymore, and they retreated into Czechoslovakia, which they were then they helped support an uprising there against the Germans in the end days of the war. But then they went to surrender to the Americans because they didn't want to surrender to the Soviets because they were differently politically aligned. They were actually driven off by American machine gun fire and ended up being captured by the Soviets, and some not nice things happened. But what it meant was we had an allied force that was essentially equipped with Axis war gear, including proxies and tanks and other bits and pieces that were in there that I was like, they've just been requisitioned, but it's an allied force, just in the very, very, very last days. And then there was my force, and I took Soviets, which was a fairly, what looks on the surface to be quite a balanced list, but wasn't necessarily that balanced. wasn't horrible, but it wasn't actually that balanced. And then I did a matrix of the workshop of the different forces and where I thought we'd land when the lists were released. But we'll get into that a bit later if we go to that depth. It's probably not. It wasn't successful, which is why I don't want to go over it.
yeah. No, nothing feels worse than like half-cooked work that you think would work and then it doesn't.
And it just
yeah, Jacob, with a name like Rockingham Elite Panzer Bros, I feel like that your spin-up phase was just crank the engines and let's go. Although, hilariously, I don't think any of you guys actually took an armored platoon.
No, I wanted armored from the very beginning. Funnily enough, none of us live in Rockingham now. But yeah, I stuck with the name. So I'm partnered with Jackson and Patrick. So immediately after the players pack went out, I went hunting for people to play with. And typically I play German, so I wanted to go to access people who typically play the game. Obviously, Jackson plays Hungarians very well. Patrick has been a winner of many tournaments before and does like collecting Germans. But one of the things within your players pack that not every team did, but a lot of them did, is that in the very early stages, it needed to be a separate nation as one of the requirements as well. We relaxed that towards the end just to get the player numbers and all that kind of stuff. So I took Germans, Calder, Jackson, obviously being very well equipped playing at Hungarians, took his Budapest pocket defenders, and Patrick tried his first time at Finnish. Which now he's happily collecting. It really suits his play style.
Happily.
And yeah, it seems like those are the kind of special rules that he could maximize quite well. So that was actually a really strong team from the outset. However, we didn't do any practice games in the lead up as a team. I managed to play one game with a club member just to get some familiarity of the rules. And I think that was the best way to play because Mission 1 is probably the most different to what was available last year.
Yeah.
And had all of the extra special rules and stuff. So getting your head around that one really prepares you to be well equipped for the next two. So the lead up, the matchup was strong. We didn't play any practice games, but we did do the whole Facebook messages for weeks and months leading up, and we did do a voice call a few nights before, and I've never really designed a matchup spreadsheet. I don't know if it's normal for game systems to actually publicly list out the list. Obviously, you're doing it now, and I think it's great. I don't know if that's normal for other systems and whatever else, but it's
for
awesome
team
because
events with a draft.
Okay. So we went through everything. We went through dice cap. We went through what units they're bringing, and where we think would we be best equipped with the ability that we could potentially draft up who we wanted to. So obviously you can't do that. There's dice rolls involved and everything else. But in the best scenario, we thought Patrick has more anti-tank capability and I had the least. We basically drew up what we thought would be our best matchups. And there were a few things to consider, but I think I would actually really like to publicly see how Dan did his and even Matt Shadowlord, how he did his. Because I saw them at a glance at the event. I'm like, oh, you guys are going to the very far extent of actually preparing for this on that side of things. Whereas I kind of just put together what I think would make sense at the time, never doing it before.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, what you normally see is that people will do a spreadsheet and they will color code a matchup as red, orange, and green. Green being, I'm going to win this. Orange being, it's a 50-50. It could come down to dice. It could go like stuff that's out of my control. Red is, I'm going to lose. And you do that for each list and for each possible list it could face. And so then the idea is you feed green matchups to strong players, and because they will score big. and and then you feed your orange matchups to your weaker players because you're expecting it to be a wash, like a draw or a minor win or a minor loss. And so if you give it to a less skillful player, if you give a green matchup to a less skillful player, they might fumble and not secure the win. And that's much more, particularly when you see in the other team events that I've seen, the most important result is the one that was predicted. Right. Yeah. So if you come back with a worse result than predicted, that's a huge problem. If you come back with a better result that's predicted, that's great. It's amazing. But the best result is that if you get a green matchup, you deliver green. If you get an orange, you deliver orange. Right? If you can do better, obviously, no one's going to complain. But if you are given an orange matchup and you deliver a red, that's when shit really starts to fall apart very quickly.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's
interestingly, it kind of just played out exactly how we had planned. which is interesting. Like, we do know of everybody who was there, and we've witnessed their games, but we haven't all necessarily played them and to an extent that we could predict.
Yeah.
But it mostly played out how we thought it would. So that was interesting. I did 6 lists. I rolled a d6.
Right.
That's the part that offends me the most.
This is going to be my next question. I think everybody sort of answered it one way or another, but I don't think anybody, at least from you 3/9, including your teammates, did team list building. It seems like each one of you grabbed a list and said, I want to bring this, and somebody else went, I'll bring this.
Yeah, so I walked into it from the beginning and I had very strict restrictions. This is what Nick, Matt, and I did last year to win Best Allies. And that was, we maximized all the VPs you'd get from the list building. That had to be a given. And you have to deny all the VPs that could be within list building. No snipers, no artillery, no mortars, because those are all things that could potentially score from the opponent. So Matt and Nick and I were very strict on that in BOB 2022. Jackson didn't care. He's got CanCon happening this weekend.
Yes.
And he wanted his list to replicate as much as what he was doing at CanCon.
Yeah, fair enough.
So it's like, I'm going to do this for prep. If we get a win, it's fine. It's good. But that's what I need to do right now. That's my headspace. And Patrick was also like, I want to finish the best I can, regardless of the list building within the event. So from the beginning, we were going against tables that had VPs from list building itself that the other guys kind of ignored. But it didn't stop our team, to be honest. And I think I put together a strong amount of players to be fair.
I think. Sorry.
No, I mean, I just got a question for Jacob. When did you become a competitive bolt action player?
There was this game.
It just happened.
There was this game with Gorcin and I, and we fast played it, and everything just clicked. And it was at an event, and it took us half an hour to get through 6 turns or something like that. And then from that point on, for some reason, I know how to play.
It was like that osmosis. I just bled everything I could with that bolt action, and you just soaked it all. No, it was that game of sectors, man. It still haunts me. I'm just because I walked in expecting, it's Jacob, we'll have a good time, and then 5 or 6 dice in, I'm just what is this game? How do I play? What the hell's going on? Just profusely sweating, trying to keep up.
My play style's more aggressive, so it works out when it works out, but it actually completely fumbles when it doesn't, which is my matchup with Matt in game 2 of this event.
Yeah.
Sorry, Dan. You go for it.
I was just going to say, it's I mistakenly left out Justin as part of Team Only Dan's. So Dan Majak had to, towards the end, his work called him up to site, and so he wasn't able to attend. So I needed a stand-in token Dan, and Justin filled in that gap for us very, very nicely. And that meant that the list building that I'd done, I had to redo, and the matrix I'd done, I had to redo about 2 or 3 days before the event.
That's what you get for being organized.
Yeah.
Oh, look, it's fine. It's just, my printer didn't print the right colors anyway, so.
So moving on from that, let's go into round one. So round one is Finest Hour. This is a mission from the HMG mission pack. Still prototyping, has some flaws. It also doesn't help that when you put the right version of the mission into version 2 of the players pack, and then you put the wrong one into version 3. But hey, rules is written. I paid the points. That's on me. I can't fault a player for playing the players pack, right? That's what we say in the show is read the damn players pack. So I chose to honor.
That's on me too, because I checked that before you put it out.
Yeah. So Finest Hour is played long, and it's basically enforcing the combat drop Geronimo rules for infantry. I'm just going to breeze past the list. You can access the mission. You can access it in the players pack. But there's 4 objectives and a diamond in the middle. There's one closer to each deployment zone. Basically, if it doesn't have a seat, it has to jump, and that's really what it came down to. And I think a lot of people got a little bit caught up in some of the exceptions, but the principle is, if it can't forward deploy, if it doesn't have room in a transport, and if it doesn't have its own engine, it has to jump. You can also outflank, and I adjusted the distances and that sort of thing. Yeah, it basically everything has to combat drop that doesn't have a forward deploy, is not an outflank, doesn't have transport, doesn't have its own engine. If you've played Company of Heroes 1, I wanted Red Ball Express. That's the mission that I wanted people to play in bolt action, because I think there's a couple of unique experiences in Company of Heroes and that I'm not trying to just translate and just be like, no, I want.
Why not?
Company of Heroes. but I want the tactical and strategic challenges that come into it, and also give the tools that you have in Company of Heroes, like being able to deploy infantry in the middle of the scenario. And so, yeah, basically, you follow the combat drop experimental rules pretty much verbatim. I think there was maybe 1 or 2 things that I changed. I basically just evened up a few things and clarified a little bit of the wordings, but more or less verbatim. Dan, you played Tyler round 1 for Finest Hour. If you guys just want to talk me through what you think about the mission and your quick experience for that.
Yeah. Sorry, Tyler, do you want
just first off, that board was brutal. we played on Planet Bowling Ball Bolt Action Edition, and it was awful. I was informed later that
no terrain.
Yeah, the people who bought the board forgot 2 hills, which, it doesn't sound like that much. Yeah. But on a flat board with just smoke and like a house, those 2 hills are vital, and they weren't there. Anyway,
which team chose the terrain for that matchup?
Well, so the way that it went down, I think you guys won priority, Tyler. So you chose the first matchup, and therefore the first board of terrain, it must have been we chose the first board of terrain. Either way, the first option that I got to put a board and matchup down, we had that table, which was essentially smoke craters on the flat ground, with minimal scatter or anything on the board. Or one of the other nicer looking boards. Now, I chose to give one of the nicer looking boards to my teammate by choosing to put Tyler and I, which I apologize retrospectively for Tyler, to put us onto that table to give my teammate a better shot at a draw or a victory.
Right.
Because I looked at our lists and the matchups, and it was either I versus Tyler or I versus Tom Barrett with the armor platoon that I built for him. And I looked at the smoke marker table, because I pretty much had said I'm going to take that table in my head, and I went, but if I take the armor platoon, I'm going to get absolutely wrecked. So I went, I'm sorry, Tyler, it's you and me.
Right. Okay. So that's how that happened. So Tyler, if I remember correctly, you took more or less a like reinforced platoon. It was kind of a balanced list with an M36.
Yes. No. So I took a Iwo Jima Marines list, which meant I could have 3 BARs, and I had three squads with 3 BARs. I think that was 2 and 1 or something like that.
Sure.
And I could also take 2 flamethrowers. Spoiler alert: 0 hits throughout the entire day across all flamethrowers.
Ouch.
So that hurt. And for the first time in my life, I used a medium tank. It was amazing. Medium tanks, not overcosted.
even in our game, Tyler?
Man, our game was great. Like, I mean, I rookie piloted my own tank, but...
Look, yeah, that was great. I will admit that, so the game that Tyler and I played, irrespective of our round matchup, which was actually quite closer than what the points really said overall. Tyler and my game, we were 1 point the difference, 22 to 21 in Tyler's favor. We both fought very hard on that board to scrounge every possible point that we could. And
that was the cagiest match of bolt action I've ever played.
Oh, it was wonderful to play it with you, but at the same time, I was like, we both sat there and we went, literally, if like either the hills had been there or if we had like a little bit more different scatter, I was like, this would have been a totally different game.
Yeah.
Because between us, we had almost like 22 combat drops. I mean, 8 of them were mine, or a bit more than that. It was. There was a lot of stuff that was just dropping in, and like our board, like just everything was behind smoke, just in lines. There was just. I was like, I don't know what else to do here except try and stick to the smoke and do what we can.
Yeah, I had a house, and I literally just conga lined all 3 of my squads, and a captain, and a flamethrower, and a bazooka, all behind this house, which left it as a juicy target for Dan's Katyusha.
Which I couldn't really open up with. I couldn't open up with that too early because I'd forward deployed my sniper into that building. And so I couldn't risk being too close to my own sniper and auto-fail the shots. So I had to be a little bit picky and choosy. Eventually, Suicide charged him for the extra point, and then I was like, right, now I can just let loose, and it missed every turn after that.
Yeah, fair enough. So who ended up winning that game?
Tyler.
It was a draw, but I quote unquote won by 1 point.
You won.
Oh,
two
man,
point,
I don't feel like I
victory
won that
point
one.
differential. Come on, Dan.
Okay, fine. It was a draw.
I don't feel like I won it. That's for sure. Yeah, no, I've mentioned.
So
basically
was it
everything.
just like a lot of posturing, and then
basically
you guys just...
our infantry corps never actually touched each other. It was just kind of like pinging shots around the sides of each other and stuff like that. Yeah, captains good.
Yeah,
like captains. Giving them their bonus in the 12-inch range basically meant the pins I got from the Katyusha and the combat drop meant nothing because my boys were like, Cappy's standing right behind me. Can't disappoint him. Let's go. Which was great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When I play tested Finest Hour, spoilers, I actually play tested the mission. I didn't take a captain, and my opponent did, and we both of us just combat dropped like absolute madmen right into the middle of the board, and so there wasn't an option of our infantry corps touching. It was like a bowl of soup. We were all just in this milieu of shell casings and bayonets, and just him just being going, oh yeah, they're going to activate because they're veteran on 3 pins with a captain. They're just going to up and at you and charge you. And I'm going to activate all 3 of these units at the same time, plus the captain, because I can. And I ended up just with like my 1 squad that was left, just chasing this captain around, just trying to turn off his snap 2. And it felt really fun. And I think it, at least for me, it really captured this kind of the stuff that you see in Band of Brothers, was just like a key influential leader at the right place at the right time, making good decisions, and giving the players that option for that. So Jacob, how did your Finest Hour go?
It was quite fine, actually. But, so it was my highest scoring of the day. I faced up against a newbie, Anthony. I think it's his 2nd or 3rd game. So interesting. We grudge matched the other Axis team. So
Right.
and we hyped the hell out of this with Facebook posts and whatever else, saying that we're best Axis. Spoiler: we got best Axis, so that's fine. Have to eat our words there, but the crux of the other Axis team was the mouse that Luke was playing. So
Right.
we decided
the veteran mouse.
Veteran.
Yes.
Yeah.
We decided that I wasn't equipped for that. And we got one of the other players to do it. No, like, it was clear. It was a very, like, Jackson going, like, there's no way that you can deal with that. But Patrick can, because he can arty it, and the arty won't clip. If the arty hits with pins and doesn't hit on a 6...
Yeah.
It won't be, the extra pins it will get won't be benefited by veteran, and that's your ticket to actually getting this thing down. So we decided that from the beginning.
That's the definition.
But yes,
of
so
everyone
everyone matched up to how we said it on the spreadsheet, which was cool. But yes, I got the newbie. Anthony's a very lovely fellow, and I coached him through probably the first 3 or 4 turns on what I would do if I was in his position on things that just in the order of operations, because he'd be like, hey, I'm going to shoot with this. I'm like, you know what? It's going to be better if you do this and that before you commit to that. So I think that I got through to him on a lot of things, and then I was regretting it at about turn 2. Because I was like, oh man, now I'm playing myself and he's in a better position.
Tutorial off.
But unfortunately for Anthony, his list building was clear. Me back in 2018 or 19, bringing the models I own.
Yep.
So yeah, he's had to take a veteran P3 and 9 order dice, and like there are clear things after a couple of games that he'll realize, okay, that this isn't ideal.
Yeah.
So that there was some certain things in the list building that weren't ideal for him, unfortunately. And yeah, we played the combat drop differently. I misread it. Surprise, surprise. I thought it was within the 18 inches and then plus 2d6 for the movement up, whereas I think it's actually the table half. And then, you can sit thinking table half means my 18 inches of deployment, all that kind of stuff. So that's where my headspace was at. But obviously we both played it that way, so that was fine. But, all of my infantry rolls for like my squads were like 2-3 inches. And like I'm in this heavy hedgerow that's just... like it's just so thick and you can't really see anything. And yeah, all my squads that want to move up, they get 2 or 3 inches. But my mortar gets 12, and now it's kind of out of position, all that kind of stuff. And that happened to me in my test game as well. I did not learn. So anyway, the mission is really cool. I got the better half of Anthony, and then turn 3 or 4, it was really going my way. And he's like, look, I want to call it here. I'm like, I feel you. And normally I would, if anyone were to say that normally in any game, even in tournaments prior, I've said, all right, let's do it. Like I'm done. I don't want you to have a bad time. But I said, okay, I'm sorry. I'm here with a team.
Yeah.
You're going to have to commit to some moves, and I'm going to fast play as quick as we can, and I'm going to tell you what I would have done afterwards. Yeah. So that's how it ended up going. He didn't have a great time for the whole event, which is unfortunate.
In terms of scoring.
Scoring, and I talked to him about his matchups as well. He was a bit iffy on some of them, and I'm like, I'm really sorry that that's your experience. He faced nice people. Yeah, he would have met a lot of good friends and all that. But yeah, I guess first event, playing the game for a few times, it's not going to be great.
And it's it's a sort of sorry. Go ahead.
Neville put in so much work this whole event. Like he killed like 3 squads each game at least, pinned the hell out of other things, and there's a funny match that we got up to the end, and like there was a point in time where I'm like, oh, this could clip like 6 of your things. You'll get one of mine as well. Do we want to play it that way? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, yes, let's do it. So Neville did a lot of work. Flamers did nothing all 3 games. Werble is crazy.
Yeah,
I could not
good.
believe how good this thing is. I've always slept on it because I just see the word open top and I see 240 points. I'm like, this is just stupid. I'm going for drilling next. That's my next pick for something I'm going to buy, which is just a half track variant, 3 autocannons, and it's like 100 points less. But yes, Werbel can go on the side of a Panzer III and shoot it with 8 shots, and it's going to come out on top.
Yep. Yeah.
Oh man, yeah. Mission was great. Anthony's a lovely fellow. Really want to play him again, but it was a table wipe for him, unfortunately, which makes me feel like shit. But it put us as a team in a good position for the event.
Yeah,
I think that's a really interesting point, though. Is like, so in terms of this event or this type of event, conceivably a brand new player getting started in it has the potential for them to have a couple of bad matchups in particular, because they'll get skewed with a list. You only have so much control in the matchup process, and if you know that the other team has got a good player or a couple of good players, a newer player with a list that haven't played that much and not as much experience typically is going to lead to one of those green matchups for the other team, and so they're going to try to pursue that as well.
Yeah.
And so it's I appreciate that. Yeah, absolutely. Bad. I mean, I scored 0 for my last round, like a flat donut, 0, no points whatsoever, and that never feels good. It just doesn't feel good, right? However, that isn't going to be representative of all the events that we run in Perth either, which is the other flip side of that coin.
Yeah. I think I knew. So I play a lot of Malifaux with Anthony. He's in that group, and he's very good. And the moment, like Jacob, you said, I started showing him some stuff, and I was like, oh yeah, you're gonna regret that, because Anthony, I played a lot of games against Anthony, and he's very good at pulling punches, and he's very good at being like, hey man, just be careful, you don't want to do this because this is gonna hurt. And every time I play a game against him, I'm like, Anthony, don't pull any punches. Like, I'm not. If you stomp me into the dirt, I'm not going to be upset. I will just be like, okay, what can I do to do this better? And to his credit, he stumps me into the dirt while apologizing. He's like, sorry, but I'm just going to do this. So I knew that he's got the right attitude. That's why I knew that he's going to be fine. And like, I looked at his list and I've helped him list build previously for other games of Bolt Action. And I was like, I just pointed a few things out, and he was like, oh, look, I get it. I just really like this, and I really like this, and I'm going to try them. And I'm like, cool, man. And that's one of those things where I think when people ask you for list advice and they don't take your list advice, that's okay, because it's advice. It's not rules. It's just because you would do it that way doesn't mean they need to do it that way.
That's right. Yeah.
And the key thing is, it goes, okay, I see your point, and I'm going to try it anyway. Another classic example is when Matt Shadowlord first started playing. He took a Lee, and I was like, and it was one of the first lists that he showed me, and I think he'd only played 1 or 2 games at this point. And he was like, "Hey man, what do you think of the list?" And I was like, "Look, the Lee is a very contentious vehicle. People really hate it because the hull mount on your medium anti-tank is hull mounted, and it's it's riveted construction, so it's weaker. So it's one of those things where if your positioning's wrong, it's going to get massively punished, way more than any other vehicle. And it's also pretty expensive. When you take one of those things, like if you can use a Lee or a Grant or an equivalent very well, you can do amazing things. But it is a very unforgiving vehicle, a little bit like the Chaffee, actually.
Yeah.
And he was like, no, I get all that, but I'm going to try it anyway. And he used it really well. And he used it in several events really well. So I'm so glad that Anthony put his hand up. And actually, it's a fair credit to all of the new players. I think there was another 4 or 5 players, and including, I'm sort of lumping in the guys returning as well in that category who haven't played for 3 or 4 years. They just put their hand up and played, and frankly, I love that, especially because we talk about the team event can be more ruthless because of some of the things that we talked about. You don't want to let people down and things like this. And the matchups, as we talked about, a common strategy is to give your good players green matchups. You can get bust You can, that is a possibility, but the moment you accept that it's about a team win and not a personal win, I think it becomes much more comfortable and doesn't sour as much. Speaking of team wins, I think Rocky and Panzerly Bros, you guys came on top after round 1. I think Dan, you guys came out on top round 1 as well. Maybe just
barely. Yeah, we needed 7 points for the major win, and we ended up with 8, I think, as a team.
Yeah. I can go back and check, but the numbers add up that you guys came out the win. And unfortunately, Tyler, you guys slipped in as a loss on round 1 as a team, I think.
Look, the fact we even made it to the event, the name became more and more apt as we went along.
Spoilers, you say that. 2 members of We Made It were, as in individual player scores, were top 3 and top 4.
Yeah, I don't know what's happened. I've said this to you guys, but I think it's good to say to other people, I don't know what happened, but suddenly, and I'm not including Gorcin and Dan, because you guys are already really good, but essentially, Jacob and I suddenly got really good at bolt action. Hold on.
It brings a tear to my eye as well.
It brings a tear to my eye too. The pressure of being on the show, right?
Yeah. All of a sudden, it literally just clicked for me as well. Just kind of really got there. I think I came 4th or something. 5th?
Yeah, 4th overall.
Something like that.
4th overall, Tyler.
Which is... Yeah, I had no idea where I was during the day. It was like,
it's
next game? All right, let's go.
Yeah.
Because they were 90 minutes each.
Yeah. So it was 30 minutes for the draft, 90-minute game time. So if you got your drafts quick, your game time was almost, what's that? 2 hours.
Almost 2 hours 15.
Almost 2 hours, yeah. Still pretty tight, but 905 points doable. I think but I have said this publicly, like I would love to go to 2.5 hour game times and give everybody the 4,000 points. But I also know that the Albany guys drive back immediately after the event's over. And I also kind of like being at the pub before 5. That's kind of nice. So yeah, that might be if I get more consistent feedback about the timing, and I can go through some of the feedback at the end that I have gotten so far, then I will absolutely push that to 2 hours and we'll just eat shit, I guess. But I think I was just kind of, last event, I didn't get as many time complaints. I got about 2 or 3 this time around. I only got about 1 last event. And last event was the first time the draft happened, and all of the drafts were still done by 15 minutes. So yeah, it was bit of a surprise all around, but hey, we're here. So round 2 was Bite and Hold, which again, that's a HMG mission one. That one is good to go. Has been prototyped, has been played plenty of times, has been played at a previous event.
It's a good mission.
So this is this is choosing where your objectives go. How did round 2 go for everyone?
Yeah, I might go the reverse this time because mine will be very quick. So, listeners of the show, we have a gun in the scene. His name is Matt Shadowlord. He cannot be stopped.
Unstoppable.
He was my partner last year. We got best allies. He pretty much made that happen. I'll admit that. Because we were a previous teammate, we had this camaraderie going on from the beginning, and it was such a false sense of security.
He's very good at doing that.
Yes.
He's very good at doing that.
Look, his personality is amazing, and he's really fun to play against.
Yeah, he is.
But it'd be like I'm playing a game with Tyler and be like, I'll move it just about 9 inches. If it's slightly less, who cares? Man, did I regret that. So, this is my payback for Anthony. What I did to you was fair for a new player. What happened to me was just complete BS. All right. So I got tabled. I'm tabled turn 3, just to put it lightly. Heavy hitters drop it. Heavy hitters drop in first turn. So what Werble dies, Flamers die, both of them. Mortar's dead. Nebel's being ranged in with 2 different units. So this is a tough one. Reichstag is not a great table for tournaments. Okay. So it was heavy cover across the board, which is nice, but we let Matt deploy in the Reichstag. Mm-hmm. But that means that like he's got vision of the entire board. And he's in heavy cover. And I decided to be nice and be like, yeah, we're playing this as 5 buildings because it'd be stupid if I got a Nebel and that's one entire building and can clip the whole board. And then he said, yeah, well, it would benefit me because I could do some teleporting assaults and all kinds of stuff with that as well. So we're a bit fair on that. Lovely banter throughout the game, but just nothing went my way, and like units weren't getting pinned; they were just getting deleted turn 1. I mean, I went heavy in experience as well, so it was to be expected. But and I also played aggressive, which was just running into exactly what he wanted. We foresee that within our team, anybody would have lost against Matt, but I don't think they would have lost as bad. And I don't think I would have done as bad on a different table.
Okay.
It's a rough table.
And that's where those matchups and those things start to make the difference, right?
Yeah, so he was heavy Gurkha, and we just foresee that would have been more difficult to deal with Patrick and Jackson with their higher infantry lists, and we're hoping with the amount of HE and the Flamers and all the templates that I had in that I had a good chance, and obviously a Werble and whatever else. But there just was not a position where I had cover from the Reichstag. Everything was visible regardless. And then, he just had to go through several buildings of cover to then charge all the infantry that were left. So I was done by turn 3. No VPs on my end other than the list building. That was it. Oh, I killed a sniper, so then I got that point.
I think it also bears worth mentioning that he has Mountain Warrior Gurkhas in that list.
So
basically what that means is you get to run 9 inches through rough ground, which meant your only real sort of 2 options of dealing with Gurkhas, which is ambush and rough ground, to buy you time.
It's even harder.
You don't get as much. You don't get as much opportunity, and of course, Matt plays extremely well. You basically summarized my experience when I played against him. I was like, oh hey, he's really nice. I actually like great sport, good banter. And then you make like 1 or 2 casual moves, and suddenly he plays something like extremely procedurally, and you're just like, oh shit, I'm in trouble. I'm in so much trouble.
He's a smiling assassin.
That's for sure.
He's great. Like the games that the single game I've had against him so far, there will be more to come. But the one that I had against him, he strategically disassembled me. Ordered my parts on the tray. Put me back together again backwards just to make sure I wouldn't move.
It's a universal experience.
But it was really, really good. And like he took the time to try as hard as he could to actually clarify certain rules up front to make sure we were both going to play the same way. And I have nothing but respect for that, because he's trying to do the right thing to go, I want to make sure that the parameters that I play within are going to be the same. But then I'm going to play hard because, hey, that's how I play. And I got no issues with that because I love every second of being disassembled, which is maybe a little bit more, says more about me than about him.
My.
But,
so you got disassembled in round 2 then, Dan? Is that what you're trying to tell us?
So we're actually in round 2. When I was playing against the Cheese Forum Miniature Wargaming team, which was David, Sean, and Kane. And I actually thought we got the matchups that we wanted in that particular round. And I went into my matchup was against Dave, who had British Market Garden Selector, so whole thing was veteran. 10 order dice, but still 40 bodies, so it was still a fairly high body count across the the margin between support weapon teams and infantry squads. We were playing on a table which aesthetically it looks amazing, which was one of the Outpost ones from Andy Gorcin. Looks really, really good. There's a few things from a tournament organizer's point of view that I would probably introduce differently onto that board to make it a little bit more probably balanced and competitive, because there's some very open fire lanes and there's a lot of bases where the models for the bases of the ruins extend, but they don't necessarily offer anything like it's holding trees up or it's holding some aesthetic things, which looks great. Again, looks really, really nice. However, from a game point of view, if you don't play those things as anything, it's basically open ground with no line of sight blocking stuff. So there was actually not a lot of line of sight blocking elements on that particular board that were towards the middle, because the road comes up and then crosses the middle across the two paths. And so what that meant was that even though I had 15 dice, even though I had a lot, I couldn't hide from his artillery observer, for example. I couldn't hide from his long-range machine guns. So I was having to focus fire on his machine gun jeeps to keep them out of the fight, but that meant I wasn't harassing his infantry. And so a few of those things kind of snowballed a little bit. Poor Dave, I don't think had ever faced a competent 15 dice Soviet list before, so he also took a little bit longer trying to even understand the decisions he needed to take to be effective. That's not a slight against him as a player or anything. I simply think that he was just like, no, I really need to think hard about how to deal with this, because if I get it wrong, I'm going to suddenly be in a position where I can't recover. So I don't fault him for that. I did misread the objective, the way the objectives are capped in that mission. So one of the middle objectives, which I thought was contested, actually swung to David in the end from one extra man that he ran onto that objective. Even though we had roughly approximate numbers, he then had one more scoring unit than what I did. So he actually capped that objective out. If we'd had them more time from because we only just finished turn 3, which meant I'd only just really recovered from his prep bombardment his artillery strike coming in, which meant that your 15 dice weight can't really actually generate too much at that point to bring your numbers to bear. Because if I had, then I would have also swung the other way, because we would have had 45 infantry or something stupid like that on that middle objective. But I would have had it across like 6 or 7 units. There was no way knowing he was going to get it back. But the cost of that, we had to make a couple of end game very quick decisions for the timer. So he graciously allowed me to roll for my reserves to come on from outflank, so they didn't count as auto death, but I allowed him to move his last remaining units that he would have attempted to move, and one of those was the ones that kicked over that 6-point objective, which is fine. Like I was like, he's letting me not kill my units, which is actually worth more to me overall, so I've got to let him take that one move. I thought he played it really, really well. He did end up winning 14-8 because of that 6-point difference. So I went in expecting a draw, played for the draw, but because I misread that objective, I ended up losing that match.
Yeah, it was. I think there's something very subtle in Band of Brothers that was unintentional, that I've only just sort of cottoned on to in the last couple of days, is that if you make the objective scoring by the number of order dice that are holding the objective rather than no enemy order dice and only one of yours, and you make the round shorter, that suddenly makes any armies that rely on counterpunching that much more disadvantaged than normal.
Which is what my list was actually built to do. It's absorb your impact. Thanks for the dinner. Now I'm going to pay returns. And my returns that I paid generally outweigh what I took. And that's fine. That's just, I did misread the mission.
But it's one of those things that, like, had that game gone to turn 4 or turn 5, theoretically, there's no way that your opponent could have won. But it's just because
it would have been a draw. I don't know if I would have got the win. Per se,
I get that.
But definitely it would have been a draw.
And so that's sort of one of those key things that is, I don't know if nefarious or insidious is either one of them, because it implies intent. But the important thing is there is an unintended advantage, disadvantage there. And that's something that I'll have to consider much more carefully for the next Band of Brothers. I think first time around, I thought, the first time the event was run, I was like, I just want people to play. The second time the event was running around, my focus was on getting people to bring different lists, which worked. And so now that I've got both of those things, now it's about really tightening up the event. So I think it's definitely something, a combination I had overlooked in terms of the number of units that can control objective and the turn, and basically the time limit you've got to play the game, especially because of a lethal game that the bolt action is. It's not a game where you have like half your army on the table by the end of the game usually, assuming equal skill and all the other sorts of stuff. So Tyler, how was your round 2?
Mine was it was a pretty rough one for my opponent. So I played Northern Historical Gamers, the RSG equivalent up north. Our brothers from another suburb. And thank you. So that was Trent, Adam, and David.
Yeah, David.
I believe. Yeah, so I had the honor of getting to play David, which was fantastic.
Such a nice guy.
He's fantastic, man. So he brings his army out. It's a veteran Australian list against my kind of regular US Marine list. And he had a chibi tank. And I'm like, do you know I've got a chibi tank? And he's like, where do you think I got the idea from? I was like, okay.
I did send him the link to the Toon tanks, like the moment that you were doing yours.
Yeah.
He may have more than one.
I think he was talking about getting another if he didn't already. But yeah, no, he was... I felt really bad. Turn 1, I pick up 3 of his dice and put 3 pins on his Matilda. And Matilda didn't do anything for the rest of the game and ended the game on 7 pins.
Ouch.
Yeah. It was just... I just kind of turned it on this game. I just got really, really hot dice and just had everything set up. It was like I had all the choke points and I had angles on most of his stuff, and it was just rough. Yeah. I felt kind of bad because the whole time he's like, oh, this is fun, this is good. And I'm just sitting there, I'm like, yeah, that's dead. And the worst part is, and if anyone, really, really wants to get a psychological edge on their opponent in tournaments that they're playing, right? Here's the secret. Write the name of the soldier on the bottom of the model's base and tell your opponent who they just killed. Holy shit. I felt awful by the end of the game. It's like, you just killed Marcus. So... Here's James. How dare you?
So where that comes from, I think it's episode 2 of HMG. We talk about Firefight, and that's where. And in Firefight, we had a little section in there where we were going to name soldiers. So at that point in time, I named all my DAC, and David named all of his as well.
Love it.
That's why everyone's got a name, and his kids are quite involved with his painting and that kind of stuff, so they get really excited about naming them and making them heroes and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
that's cool.
Honestly, it feels like he's a bit of a hipster when it comes to this kind of stuff. Like he has female officers as well, and he has got the chibi tank. He feels like it feels like he's kind of like, I was doing this stuff before it was cool, man. Which is fantastic. I love it. But yeah, so the only other big thing, like I won quite handily. Really, really, really good game for me. But David was a great sport about it. And in the end, so the only thing, and I don't know what this is, but his officer team, so a 2-woman team, did work. They scored 6 of his 9 victory points. They closest to the enemy. assaulted a team in one and assaulted with a officer squad and mortar actually as well. He assaulted a mortar in one. So they did work, and there was a hot minute there where he was also about to backcap my back objective with just his officer team, having snuck it between my tank and a couple other bits and pieces. I managed to smack it at the end with an inexperienced machine gun from super close range because that was about to go badly. But yeah, for a long time it was like, okay, this is the kind of game we're playing. Okay, we'll try and just get this over with. Holy cow, where did that come from? Ooh, he might actually win this. Yes, but in the end, I think it was 9-16 or something. Yeah.
Clean win.
But yeah,
nice.
Yeah. Good game. Good game.
Yeah, I think speaking about sportsmanship, I was actually very amazed at how many people told me their opponents were good sports. So all of the new players told me that. I said, hey, like, your bolt action players are really great people to play. I had the returning players who came back and said, hey, these guys are really, really good. I want to play with bolt action with these guys all the time. And also the armchair generals, which is the guys who is a group of guys who don't spend a lot of time on social media. One of them brought his son as well as one of his team members, and he said all of our opponents were great sports, every single one of them, and the whole team said that. So that's basically, you have 3 people who met 3 other people, so there's 9, there's 12. Like it was easily, basically everybody just said. By the number that I got, it basically got down to the point that everybody said they played a great sport. Was how it came, which I think is the real key thing, especially at an event that, as we just talked about, can be ruthless in terms of winning and matchups and stuff. To see everybody go, yeah, look, it's a ruthless event, but everybody was really good about it. Like that's, you can't ask for more. I think, is that the norm within
drafting team games in other systems? Because I would imagine that people forming a team have to have a certain personality type that would attract working together, right? Not that we have many of those kind of players on the opposite spectrum in bolt action when we're in a singles event.
Anyway,
but I'm just saying, is that more so that you see that?
I found that not to be as consistent in other game systems. I think it's probably the most diplomatic way I can say that.
Yeah. Okay.
I think consistency is probably the right word there. And when our Perth scene gets large enough, our consistency will also change simply by the number of.
It's a bell curve.
The bell curve. More people involved and potential of one or more of those people to be having a bad day, or just to be going through some stuff, so it affects their gameplay. That naturally all just seems to happen. So, like for example, with 40k. The consistency of who you get, most people where they're going to sit on that bell curve quite comfortably, but that's a large community in Perth. Like it's a really large community in Perth, and so you do have your extremes of someone being absolutely fantastic and someone just having a rough day.
What has been my experience is that there seems to be a valley of salt that exists in the the above average, but not quite like amazing players. And it seems that, and this is my personal opinion, and I'm not painting anybody with this brush, but when I have found somebody I played a game with that I didn't enjoy, or I looked at it and went, like I'd play them at a tournament, but I wouldn't seek that person out to play a game with them outside of this setting, that they've always been in that above average category. That's not to say that everybody in that category is a bad sport, but most of the bad sports I've encountered have fallen into that category. And I don't know, I've heard some really good players say that's them thinking they need to behave like that to get to this level. I don't necessarily share that opinion. That's just what I've heard. Or if it's just one of those things where they're kind of stuck there and they don't know how to proceed, and so they get a little bit salty or whatever. But that's been my experience, is that band there of people who are above average but not at the top and not threatening sort of the top. That seems to have a higher proportion of salty players. But yeah, not a bolt action seed. So go us.
No.
Go us. Yeah, as I said, we had
Now that we've finished stroking ourselves, should we continue?
Let's. Yeah, I'm done pontificating about the personality distribution of wargamers when cross-referenced to their global skill metric. Round 3. Anybody want to kick us off with round 3? We played Destroy the Supplies. Dan, this is one of your concoctions. It's basically hold objectives or blow them up. Pretty difficult to. Well, actually, no. There are. They're in a typical balanced list. They are very difficult to pop because you need 2 wounds on 6s, and it ignores pen modifiers and a whole bunch of other things. So
in a single shooting attack, two sixes in a single shooting attack.
Yeah. So it's and you're absolutely right. Like when I first pulled this mission together, I had used our current meta as it was, where most people were bringing balanced lists. They weren't necessarily too skewed, and I certainly hadn't put it in the frame of testing it in something like Band of Brothers. So it was actually a great litmus test to go, there's a couple of flaws on this one that I hadn't actually thought through. First of all, the typo in the pack when I sent it to Gorcin, which had the victory points for killing it and holding it reversed. So you got more for killing it, which was actually not the intent. It was meant to be the other way around. So so you were actually meant to get more points for holding onto it.
That makes more sense.
Your opponent goes, I can't get to it, but I can snipe it off you for points, and then they would shoot it. That was actually what was meant to happen. But I obviously had, when I was typing it up late at night or whatever, had a brain fart and just put them the wrong way around. So that was the first problem.
All right. So, moral of this podcast episode: I know I tell everybody to read their own read the TO's player pack. TOs, read your own players' packs because we didn't. Because this is like the 5th or 6th substantial error that we found in the players' packs that people actually played.
Yep. So apologies to those where they were just like, it makes no sense to hold them. Why? Like, I want to shoot my friendly one, because that also wasn't in the pack that you couldn't shoot the friendly one.
I had to yell that at the start of the day.
That was hilarious. I had like 3 people on the day be like, "Can you blow up your own objective?"
Yeah, and I'm running around quickly going, no, and Gorchin's like, no. But anyway, so that was a mistake. But the other one is because I hadn't tested it against what would be conceivably a particularly skewed list.
Like
the idea of actually not even, because one Dacre Stewart I went 2 6s, that's right. But what I hadn't considered is, for example, 3 Dacre Stewarts bearing down on the one objective, or even multiple objectives and taking out multiple at once, and that also changed the goalposts in that mission. And so now when it actually comes to that mission myself, I bust myself so that my team would have better matchups. And I versed Chris Ramsey with his armored platoon, which was 2 inexperienced T-34 76s, a T-34 85 command tank, a Gaz triple A quad flak with the machine gun
20 Maxims on it. Yeah, sure.
Yep. A Katyusha, a mortar team, a forward artillery observer, and a Cosmolot's the armored couch with the light machine gun. And no discredit to Chris, he played it absolutely the way that he should have. And we actually had a very good game. He wiped the floor with me, used my head as a mop, turned me upside down, and just basically went, "Here's how we play bolt action."
Surgeon strikes again.
It was. Well, the funny thing was, right, so the Katyusha, we both had Katyushas, and I honorably fought the Katyusha duel off, and we were just slinging rounds at each other, that was hilariously funny. I hit nothing. He proceeded to hit his first shot that came in, hit quite a few things actually. Hit my my BA-64 and my inexperienced green squad that I had. They were close enough that the BA-64 hit clipped the inexperienced squad.
Nice.
So they were up, and had to roll for green. So they were potentially going to go from 0 pins to 1 guy remaining because 11 had been killed off. And the potential was that he could have rolled up to 18 pins.
Amazing. 18 pins on one dude. That's the dream.
Now, obviously, they would have popped due to their morale limit well before 18. But the sheer thought of trying to accumulate 18 pins on something in turn 1 was like,
what I love is that there was a genuine risk you would have had more pins than dudes left on. No, actually, more pins than dudes you started off with in the squad.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a miracle. Like, just to know that the possibility is amazing.
Do you know what the funniest thing of that was? It wasn't the fact that the squad ran away afterwards as normal. It's when the first template and the second template hit. He only did rolled 1 on pins for both times for 8 units. So I started with them on 2 pins. Then I had to roll their green check, which is then when they went down and took an extra 2 pins or whatever. But I was like, you actually bottomed out on what you could have done on the pins, and but it still wasn't enough to save them. The one guy was like, I've had enough, throws his rifle on the ground and just runs off.
Look, fair enough. All things considered.
Yeah, so we got to turn, and having written the mission, realizing what the mistake was in the scoring of the missions, we got to the about the middle of turn 3, and he killed off the third objective marker that he needed to kill off. So he was just defending his 1. And I went, right, so now that you've done that, we actually should just call the game here. And he looked at me quizzically, and I said, well, this mission, it doesn't count kill points. So if you could spend the rest of the time killing my units. We'll go through the secondaries in a second for which ones are achievable. But the reality is you're not actually getting any base level of points increase.
Yeah.
But that doesn't matter because I'm currently on 0 points and I don't have a way of getting points off you.
Yeah.
I've got an armored platoon, so I've got none of those secondaries. I'm going to lose more points. I don't have any list building points. And so I went and listed it through and I went, I'm on a 0 and I can't get better. So now it's just how big your margin of victory is.
Yeah.
Are you willing? Let's walk through the ones that we think you can get for secondaries and mark those up. And for the ones where you might get them, are you happy just to roll off for them? And when he realized that I wasn't trying to rob him of points, I was actually just saying, I'm like, no, you've already won conceivably well. It's now how far we can get those points for you. But the kills don't matter. So let's not do administrative dice rolling. And when he realized that, he was like, oh, okay, well, let's walk it through. So we walked through and he ended up on, it was like 18-0 or something.
Yeah.
It was a fairly significant
clean
swing.
win.
Yeah. But I always knew that was going to be any of the players that versed this list was going to get bust hard. And I originally in my head, I was like, I should be able to mitigate some of the damage.
Yeah.
That didn't happen.
Not when you get hit by an MRL like twice, and it hits like 4 of the units.
The Su-76, it survived 2 direct MRL hits, and it only took 4 pins, and it was happily slinging shots back at the T-34.
Look,
I was just like, this is incredible.
It earned its guard's title, that's for sure. Jacob, how was your round 3?
We're talking about players early on, about the personality traits, how much we have great sportsmanship in this scene. David, I've never played you before. David K.
Oh yeah,
you're an absolute gentleman. I would want to, if I could choose to play bolt action with anyone, I'd play it consistently with him for the rest of the year. He is absolutely.
Is that one of the best miniature wargaming team guys?
Yeah. He's a really good sport.
Would you like to know why he's a really good sport? He was on a 12-game losing streak with Italians before Band of Brothers, and he had won 2 games before he played you.
Really?
So he was. Like, that's not to say that he was any different when I played him against his Italians. I'm not to say that he wasn't a good sport, but he had, like, every reason to be over the moon and just be an absolute gentleman about
it. Very humble and, actually quite a strong player. I think it could have easily gone the other way. In the end, discrediting the entire game, I outclassed him on VPs because of list building.
Yeah.
So it would have been a draw if I didn't have those extra points in there. Those guys were very cool. They came prepared of being the cheese forum. The objective markers were pieces of cheese. And we agreed very early on, you hold them, you have your units there. But if you destroy them, you eat the piece of cheese.
And that was actually a consistent theme throughout the day. So whoever scored one of their cheese objectives got to eat it. And that was the most consistent use of a single team's objective markers throughout the entire day. They had that was the only time I looked at any table row and I saw 100% of one team's objective markers out every single game. And I was like, there's just little bits of cheese everywhere. And I know that we talked about the cheese. I know it's a great idea. Last Band of Brothers, one of the players of the Cheese Miniature Wargaming team, Cheese 4 Miniature Wargaming team, he had to duck out for, I think it was last tournament actually, he had to duck out for a round, and I was backup TO. And I just gave him shit because he went to go have lunch with his family, and then he came back and he had brownies and didn't bring me any. And it was like, I wasn't serious. I was just like, where are my brownies? This time around, the guy comes with a giant tray of brownies his mum had. And they were actually so good. So next time Cheese Miniature Wargaming team is Cheese 4 Miniature Wargaming team is absolutely doing all of the catering for Band of Brothers. They're doing dessert and appetizers, and Dean's doing brisket because that was
yes.
Sign me up.
Just
Dean, please, we need your brisket, man. Please,
we need his brisket. Work was not kind with his schedule. Unfortunately, he couldn't smoke us a brisket.
Yeah. Look, I think I called this way too late on Facebook of saying, all right, here's my team objective marker that we're gonna have. we had our little Panzer, we had a little Hetzer, and we had 4 little monocles because we're the Panzer elites, and we had 4 players because we had 1 sub in for round 3. So we all had the monocle emojis, and that was our objective marker. Northern Historical Gamers, sweet objective marker as well. So they had some jungle basing and stuff across the board, and then they had these like little flags with the NHG logo on it.
I actually think it said Northern Hysterical Gamers, by the way. I don't.
Oh, really?
I kind of like that.
I spotted that on one of the banners. That or I was hysterical.
Perfect.
Possibly.
But yes, the cheese one was amazing.
Yeah.
Especially we get to eat it as we're destroying the objectives. We didn't read as like we read the we skimmed through what we needed to know for the mission, but we didn't actually realize that kills didn't matter.
Oh yeah.
But we both played it that way, and I think it made for a very memorable and exciting game that's just going to stick with me forever. It was very much back and forth the whole time. A lot of wounds, a lot of pins, everybody charging each other. Werble putting in a lot of work. Nebel, probably at least a hit every round. It just went crazy. But he was coming on the outskirts of the board. He knocked out my heavy mortar with the Recce Jeeps. Yep. Recce Jeeps have double MG. Yep. They're pretty good for points. It was a really fun game. And then I was holding a lot of the objectives, but he was just then rushing to destroy them. And we had like maybe 4 turns of trying to shoot an objective and not being able to do it. Which so the crux of it was that you needed to score 2 hits. Sorry, you need to get 2 damaging results on a 6
in one shooting
in that round of shooting.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that changes it a lot. So I think actually keep it as is, Dan. It's easier to hold the objectives, and the sniping for us was too hard to do. We ended up getting equal destroyed points, but I think we were holding them for the majority of the game.
I'm actually considering making it that you can actually only destroy them in an assault against the objective.
Yeah.
So actually taking the shooting away completely, and so it's either you hold them or you assault the objective, and that also brings defensive circle play into it to obviously try and keep the enemy away and other things like that.
You could
taking the shooting away altogether.
You could probably do something like a pen, basically treat it as a Pen 7 open top vehicle that's standing still. So you hit it on 4s, you got to get the penetration roll through. Any damaging result, it's destroyed. But at least that way, that's harder to cheese. Because even if you take something like Gurkhas, you don't get double the attacks. And if you get like tough fighters, you're still paying the points and it's still like explode. Or no, it doesn't explode because it
won't explode.
I think that probably would if you treat it as a Pen 7 open top vehicle for the purpose of assault, that's probably
a reason to take tank
the
hunters?
simplest. Well, no, because it's open top.
It's not a tank. It's not a tank. It's not going to get the Tough tank hunter rule.
It has to be fully enclosed for you to get the -3 to charge it. Tyler, how was your round 3?
Yeah, so I'm glad I'm going after Jacob because contrast is a wonderful, wonderful thing. A little bit of juxtaposition, never hurt anybody. So I rolled onto the board. First thing I bought on was my Sherman. 10 MMG shots, coaxial and hull mounted, black, dead objective. 2 squads of 15 shots each of US infantry. I think it's 15 shots or whatever. Missed one.
Very easily.
Black, dead. Got it. I then spent the rest of the game. I had 2, so I think I was the only one who took an air observer in the tournament.
Yeah, you were.
Yeah. Because I'm American. I get 2 of those things. Dude, why would you not? I don't get this hate for it. No, I got pretty lucky. I got 1 rookie pilot, and I think it was a strafing run on my Sherman, although it did knock it out for the rest of the game. Anyway, yeah.
VP.
Yeah. No, that's Gorcin literally said that.
By the way.
Yeah. Gorcin literally said that. He walked past, and I'm like, just rookie pilot. He's like, you get a VP. But yeah, no, this round, first one comes in. I rolled a strafing, 12, 2d6 shots or whatever. Didn't get it.
Pen 2 shots, yeah.
Yeah. The second one comes in, heavy ground attack. I think it's something like 3d6 hits because it's the build. It uses the building rules. So 3d6 hits on a building. Halving and rounding up. So I think I scored still something crazy like 8 or 9 or something. Yeah, dead. Got his objective. It was really unfortunate for him. I got first dice, rolled my Sherman on, blew up the objective, and I think that's it took him a couple more dice to be like, oh, I really need to be shooting those. Because his first couple were quite conservative. Oh, sorry. I should say I played the Armchair Generals. Mark was my opponent.
Oh, yeah.
Fantastic guy. Absolutely loved playing him. We had one, I think it was one of the other Armchair Generals come over. He wasn't playing, but he came to watch our games, and he basically just sat there and commentated our game. It was fantastic. I loved it. Absolutely loved it. Yeah, so he basically just kind of was very conservative where I was like, nah, get up. And I'm American as well, so I can move and shoot and scoot. So I basically just advanced as far as I could and just shot everything into it. After that, I was kind of like, oh, where can I get VPs? I was like, I can kind of just try and, suicidal charges and stuff. Once I get my flamethrower, leapt out. There was a church in the middle of the board. I'm like, I'm going to let him pack that full of stuff, and then I'm smack it with a flamethrower. So I think he had a sniper and another small team and an infantry squad in there. I was like, yum, yum, yum. Flamethrower runs out. Huh?
They were on different floors, right?
Yeah. So they would have done the main body, the church, and then the tower is 2 separate.
Yeah, so tower, main body, and then the tower had another story on top. So yes, they went in. But yeah, I went to shoot the infantry squad inside. Super close range with the flamethrower. Rolled a 1. And roll another 1.
No.
Once again, flamethrower didn't do anything. Nothing. The entire game.
Sounds like it made a pretty explosion.
Actually, no. That's a discredit. That happened last game against David. This game, I'm doing a discredit to Mark. He judged me to a T. He knew I was coming, put his squad on ambush, and I ran forward, and I was like, I'm just going to cop it, see what happens. He got me. So there's nothing I can really do about that. It was actually really well done. So his mortar basically just deployed and just lobbed shells onto my objective. It wasn't until the final turn of the game that he finally got it, though. And first turn, he zeroed in. So first turn he zeroed in and just could not... because it was a medium, so I think it's 1d6 or something.
Makes it hard.
Sorry, it was a howitzer. So it was 1d6 building shots. So 1d6 rolling, halving But he just kept lobbing them. Got there eventually, but yeah, spent the entire game smacking them. Also had artillery rolled on it. Like, he did everything he could, and he didn't get it. And I just walk in first turn, just blap, blap. So yeah, in the end, I think I also ran. So Forward Air Observer, friggin' MVP of the day, right? Takes out his home objective, then sprints down the side of the board, friggin' dog company style, goes past a squad and an MMG in a field, and just sprints into his objective, his deployment zone for the extra VP. Ends up being 21-11 in the end.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Good round.
Yeah.
So that is the event recap for Band of Brothers. It's all 3 rounds done. To the surprise of probably very few people, Matt Shadowlord and his team took out top spot with a healthy margin. And so thank you to War and Peace and Warlord, through them, of course, for supplying us with the official Civil Order dice. So they walked away with a set of those. There were custom HE templates that went out to the best allied, best axis. Jacob, you are the only person in Perth who has a best allied and a best axis
That's
HE
right.
template for Band of Brothers.
Come at me.
So that'll be a staple going forward. Looking at sort of some of the feedback I got for the event, people really liked theaters only. They liked no duplicate theaters. They really liked those 2 things. A lot of, I think, the VPs, the secondaries, are just going to get a total overhaul for the next Band of Brothers. Right now, there's a local minimum. It really rewards assault armies, which is...
I was surprised there were no Japanese players.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
But we did see a lot of Gurkhas. I think the field was 1/3 or a half of the field was Gurkhas, which is a lot. We had 8 allied teams and 2 Axis teams, so you probably got a little bit more than you would have expected to see on a typical 50-50. And so I think they need a little bit of an overhaul. The flip side of that, though, is we didn't typically see a lot of assault lists before Band of Brothers. We didn't see a lot of them, so I guess in shifting and forcing different metas, that worked. I liked having a single armored platoon. I thought that not a lot of players took that on, so I'm going to try to look at a way of... I don't necessarily just want to say you have to. I'm going to try to find a way to reward that. And
I actually had a thought on this. Sorry. Because list building wise, you have quite a few options to incentivize not taking a tank platoon. And even in the VPs, like, you get 1 point for keeping a medium tank alive. And so, if you kind of felt like you were missing a lot of points by taking a tank platoon. Which is from my experience anyway.
Yeah, and I think a lot of players agree with you. Which is even the 2 most effective tank platoons, one basically picked up the secondaries that they could, but just focused on being an absolutely ruthless armored platoon to deal with, like 3 T-34s, plus a Katyusha and a Gaz. The other one actually did pick up all of the list building VPs as well, because they took 3 Stewarts and they took a transport and they took a captain, an MMG, and a few other things. I actually think what I'm probably going to look at doing with the secondary VPs is I will make different sets for an infantry platoon and a different one for armored platoons. And so that way you are rewarding both kinds of play. I'm tempted to take that one further and bring another strategic element of Company of Heroes in. Again, not just to try to copy the experience, but just to bring the same challenge across. So in Company Heroes, you can choose a commander specialty, and it gives you access to unique units, but limits access to some other units. It gives you special abilities. I'm thinking of doing something the same. So I would, I'd do something really nice and contrived, like you'd go infantry, and then you'd go like a support company, so anti-tank artillery, and then you would go a tank company, and they would have different secondary objectives, and you would get and there would kind of be a weak rock paper scissors in that. So the infantry company would get bonus points for taking out artillery, and then tanks would get bonus points for taking out infantry, and so there's a nice little rock paper scissors that can be played there. But I wouldn't make that a large chunk of the VPs. Yeah, it would just be like, if you are scoring these, you're doing really well, and you got the matchup you wanted, kind of thing.
I think that's a good a good space for those secondaries to sit is make them the difference between the draw and the win, as opposed to the outright win, for example.
Yeah, and that one I think you and I see differently on that one, Dan.
Probably.
And that I'm okay with this. So in Band of Brothers, there is no difference between a victory point scored from a secondary and one scored from a primary, by design. That is pretty common in a lot of other war games, where there isn't.
I may not be explaining myself the same way then, so that's okay. We'll leave that off, because I think I'm actually aligned to your point of view. I'm just explaining it really bad.
Yeah. So basically, if I've understood you correctly, if you got a win on primaries, it doesn't matter how many secondaries you got, is what you're saying.
Oh yeah, and that's what I'm saying. So my position is more, if you limit the number of secondaries simply available, so instead of having 12 secondary points with 12 different possible outcomes that you could select, have 6. So if you're breaking your force commander group, for example, into 3 parts, have 6 distinct ones available to each of those parts. So that gives you a net result of potentially, let's say, 6 to 8 victory points that you can score out of secondaries. So if you are scoring those and doing well in your game, there is a good chance that that's going to lift you above the drawed status of simply the mission objectives,
right?
As opposed, so keeping them all the same as victory points, a victory point, but limiting just how many secondaries there are, because secondary objectives by default are secondary, not primary. So your primary mission should be the overarching.
And so I basically solved that problem differently. I just made the minimum amount of victory points that you could score. I made the maximum victory points that you could score on primaries like a 40-point swing. So if you were doing well in the primary, it didn't matter how well your opponent was doing on the secondary. They couldn't keep up. That was the intent. And I think there is obviously a massive spectrum between what we have now and where we could take it and what the actual optimal is. And there's going to be lots of local maximum efficiencies in between, and so it's just trying something, right? We know what happens when we do this, so we can see what happens when we do something differently. Yes, that was an official score sheet with somebody's name and points on it. So thank you, Jackson, actually. So that is the so it's going to be victory points overhaul. I really got to tidy up some of those missions and some of those clarifications. Probably going to work in some specialties. I will, the more I think about it, the more I'm going to go to 2-hour game time. I think if I want to go past 800 points, I got to go to 2 hours. That's pretty much, unfortunately, kind of mandatory.
If the is the captain taking instead of a Louis, is that an outside of Perth thing, or is it only
if you
look a local thing?
If you look at the back of your rule book, there is 2 sections in the force selection. There is guidelines to force selection, and there are rules to force selection. In the guidelines to force selection, in the headquarters section, it says you can take a captain or a major or a higher officer instead of your lieutenant. If you then go past the guidelines and go to the actual rules about building platoons, it says it has to be a lieutenant, and you can take a higher officer in addition. So that's kind of one of those things where, for the purposes of this player's pack, I shifted that wording verbatim from the guidelines to the rules. That's basically all that I did. And I like it.
Because I really like that. I really liked it.
Yeah. I think it just got people trying it, because I tried a captain in a normal list in addition to a first lieutenant, and I was like, this is bolt action. There is some seriously weird, cool shit that you can do here. That I think players would really get a kick out of. I don't like having 2 separate morale bubbles and stuff. It just becomes a bit administrative and a bit of a pain in the butt. But I think like a lot of people don't appreciate the difference a first officer can make. So imagine the difference that a captain can make.
Or even a major, right?
Yeah.
Like, after watching the captains in play and in Band of Brothers and thinking, you know, okay, for next year's or next event, whatever it would be that offers that restriction where we take one or the other, and like, depending on what the points limit is, because that's a major is a lot of points. But +4 morale, +4 snap 2, 12-inch bubble. I'm like, for a Soviet force, and that's considerable amount of your force that's just up and out and just
big.
Prep bombard me, I don't care.
Imagine
drop
like
your howitzers on me, I don't care.
Imagine a 6 or a 16 or an 18 dice cap, maybe even a 20 dice cap. You have a major in there, and suddenly your artillery bombardment meta goes in the bin. Yeah,
because you can just negate it with the.
It also meant for the entire day I got to keep saying El Capitan, which was very enjoyable to me.
I'm sure that has excellent. I'm sure it has excellent mouthfeel, Tyler. El Capitan.
Yes.
One of the other things that I was thinking about. This is actually from the original sort of inception of Band of Brothers before the first player pack came through, was the idea that you could trade slots between players in the same team. And there, it ended up being like a whole page of like, be careful. Like it doesn't work for this and it works for this, and I ended up having to write like a huge number of exceptions about how it doesn't work. And I felt like it was just like a bridge too far for the first event. And so the idea with it was you can only ever +/- 1 slot. Any 3-for-1s do not multiply. You don't trade the 3, you don't get 3, whatever. So it's like if I gave an anti-tank slot from my US player to the Soviet player, he doesn't now suddenly get 6 anti-tank weapons. He just gets +1. And vice versa, if somebody gives an US player an MMG, he doesn't get an additional 3, he just gets +1. And so there's a lot of like, there was a lot of these just, and you get like the Romanians and the Hungarians with the Axis support special rules. Then you get the artillery, like the French artillery doctrine.
The French,
and basically it just comes down to you can only ever go +1 - 1. And if you already have a +1 built in, you can't go +1. So basically that meant, so the French get 2 artillery slots. What it means is he could give his free artillery to somebody else. They obviously have to pay for it. He could give one of his slots to somebody else and they have to pay for it. And then the French could use his free artillery slot. So now he's not French. But he couldn't give it to a Romanian player because a Romanian already has +1 artillery, for example. But like, you just ended up with so many exceptions and so many you can't do this and you can't do that, and it became a word salad of a player's pack like Band of Brothers isn't already. And I just decided, I was like, look, that's maybe somewhere down the line I'll play with this idea. And so the other idea that I'm settling on instead is looking at introducing free units that the entire team gets. And so all teams get one of their captains exclusively. A captain can be upgraded to a veteran major for free. And that comes up during the draft. And then so you would also have a like a medium anti-tank gun or a heavy anti-tank gun that you don't pay points for that would come up during the draft. And so that way, if you end up in this matchup where you're like light on AT and you come up against the armored player, your team commander's like, don't worry, I've got an anti-tank gun coming right for you. Do you know what I mean? So I was thinking about some things like that, and that kind of leans into, again, sort of the specialties and the different commanders. So that's basically, I'm trying to give people a teaser for the next Band of Brothers, and what you should expect is I'm trying to go to 2-hour game times. I'm going to try to deliver that because I know people want it. Expect the secondaries to be completely changed. Expect another custom mission because Jacob keeps challenging me to write custom missions for every event.
That's fun.
And
really
expect there to be either some units that you will be given for free during the draft that you can trade. And obviously, I'm not in a position to supply everybody an anti-tank gun, so I will be pretty chill about the proxies on that one. So, like, any artillery piece will be fine and that sort of thing. Anything that can stand in.
Calling it here, Sturm Tiger draft.
I think that's a great idea, though.
Yeah.
Oh, it is.
Sorry, go on.
Yeah.
And it was basically trying to look at doing basically platoons slot trading without all of the bookkeeping that comes with it, because I know the Juggernauts format actually has something. It's not quite that, but basically you spend enough points, you get access to something else.
You get another slot.
Yeah. And I wanted some way of doing all of that without all of the bookkeeping and the exceptions and the word salads and things like this. Now, the Vet Major upgrade was actually Matt Shadowlord's idea. It might have been a bit tongue-in-cheek, but it was basically along the lines of something I was thinking anyway. I wasn't thinking exactly that, and I liked his idea better anyway, so I'm not going to sit here and go, no, it wasn't my idea, so therefore I can't use it, or it's a terrible thing. It's like, no, it's a good idea. I like it. I think it's going to get folded in.
And if it goes with the other pieces that you're talking about as well, and so it becomes a balancing factor. As like, well, okay, I can't give you the anti-tank gun, or I can't give you the free rifle squad, or whatever it is that but I can give you the leadership boost, or I can give you the ability to move an entire flank at once in bolt action, which is like
and so say for example you get matched up against somebody who's bringing an artillery observer, right? You'd be like, I don't care about the anti-tank gun. Give me the give me the major, and like watch me care about his artillery. You know what I mean? So that's the whole point of it is that we have rock paper scissors with rock paper scissors with rock paper scissors. So you've got those multiple different options of things that you can do. That's the teaser of coming up for the next Band of Brothers. That all being said, I've gotten a bunch of feedback already. If you have more feedback, please do send it through. You can email me, you can PM me, whatever. I want to hear it. There's no guarantee that it'll get incorporated, but I want to know what players are thinking, and I want to know what they're going. This is what I liked about the event. This is what I didn't like. And if you didn't like the draft and the team format, unfortunately, I'm not going to budge. That's I'm not going to budge for. If there are things about it that you didn't like, I want to hear them, because I want to know why it didn't work for you, why you didn't enjoy it, why you didn't appreciate it. Now, I know that there are some people who overlap things that are difficult with things that they don't enjoy. And so if your feedback is, it was a really tough tactical decision, I'm going to say, yes, that was the point. If you said that was really incomprehensible to actually understand, that's a fair criticism. That's very much a fair criticism, and it's something that I think we're going to work through coming up. So that has been my summary of Band of Brothers and what's going forward. Do you guys have any final parting shots?
Look, I think my biggest thing that I want to, and we said it on the day anyway, but Gorcin, you ran a very good event.
Thank you.
Obviously, thanks to Outpost and Justin for helping us hook it up, and obviously to all the sponsors who jumped on board and provided some support for us. That was all very well received. But being able to come as a player with a couple of other guys who were roped in, and a couple of teams were in the same spot where we all sort of roped in players towards the end. The day ran fantastically, and everyone looked like they had a really good time. And I had a lot of people, when I was talking with them, they're going, oh, is every event like this? I'm like, no, things are a bit different, but the people that are playing, irrespective of the list type, but the actual people that are playing it and the fun time that you had, that is real. That will be here almost every time. But no, you did really, really well to pull it all together.
Thank you.
And the fact that you had you're able to get 30 players together in one spot in Perth.
Yeah, well done.
That's always a good thing.
Yeah,
you did very well. So congratulations on that.
Thank you, and of course, thank you to all the players as well. I mean, it's rich of us to sit here and do a podcast and talk about the event, what we want to do next. The only reason that's possible is because we had 24 players sign up to the first one and 30 sign up to the second one. So that is the simplest metric. If you guys are coming to events, it tells us to keep doing that and do more of that, and we'll iterate on it and we'll improve it. But yeah, that's my key takeaway.
We're coming for you, CanCon. That was HMG episode 30, first recording of 2023. Thanks for joining us.
Hold on.
Subscribe,
I got parting shots here, mate.
Oh,
I got parting shots here.
Fine.
Yeah.
Interrupt me.
Yeah, goddamn right, because this is important.
Look,
I want to open this can of worms.
I kind of didn't want to interrupt that because that was a really good
Anyway, we'll never get it again.
Sorry, Tyler.
No, that's fair. I'm sorry for interrupting your flow, Jacob. It was a beautiful segue. It was such a beautiful segue, I didn't realize it was a segue first. But here we go. Here's my final takeaway. I don't want to discuss it. I'm just going to say it, and the community can deal with it. Chess clocks in bolt action. Anyway, This has been HMG. First recording for 2023. Thank you very much for joining us, guys, and we'll see you next time.
Catch you in the next one.
Catch you next time.
See you, everyone.
Bye.